Hello there, Ben Bowers, the Spirit Specialist, and we're going to do something a bit different in this video. You might have noticed that it's quite longer than usual, and that's because Ardnamurchan recently released a couple of new bottlings, 3 on the same day, and 2 of them were incredibly popular and didn't even get on the shelf. But what I normally do when I get a run of new releases like that, plus it had been a while since I'd looked at Ardnamurchan in depth, I thought about doing a tasting event, but then thought, well, actually, let's do things a little bit differently. So rather than do a structured tasting event where you've got to be online at a specific time or date, or even a place if we did one in person, I thought, right, let's just make the packs available. I'll sit down with somebody from the brand, the distillery, we'll film it, we'll make it available to absolutely everybody, and then if you have a sample pack and there's still sample packs available and you want to buy one, you can do and join in, or you can just watch it as though it was a tasting event where you didn't have the whiskies in front of you. But if you do get the pack, and this is what I normally do with the tasting events that I do online, you get a pack of 6 miniatures. And then you can drink along with the tasting as well, but you can do it whenever you want, and you can dip in and out, and you can pause it, or you can jump to a particular bottle that you're trying, and it just makes things a bit more accessible for absolutely everybody. Now, Ardnamurchan being as popular as it is, I told this to my mailing list and sold out pretty much straight away. So unfortunately, at the time of me recording this introduction, there are no Ardnamurchan packs left. So if you did want to drink along with the video that you're about to watch, you're basically going to have to get the bottles. Now, 3 of them you can still get from me. MacLean's Nose, which is the first one, the blend, I'm waiting on a delivery to turn up, but I do have the core bottle and also one of the 3 that was released but is in a bigger batch than the other 2, the AD Sherry Cask release as well. But we also look at the Paul Launois 2023 release, we look at the UK exclusive single cask bottling, and also I had 1 bottle left of the old Cask Strength, the 0922, which has been established is now out stock, discontinued. It's going to be replaced with new Cask Strength, so that was in the pack as well. This one I have here is one that we haven't actually filmed yet, but I'm going to do the same thing with Benromach, and I do have a few packs left, not many, but this is the contrast selection from the Benromach, so you can see that up there. That's got the 10-year-old as a baseline. We've then got the 2 various ways of drying the cask on a virgin oak. So we've got kiln dried and air dried. We've then got the peat smoked, bourbon matured and sherry finished. And then we also have, as with the Ardnamurchan, a UK exclusive single cask strength bottling as well. So there's going to be a similar thing with the Benromach. I'm about to film that tomorrow at the time of recording with Luke Toddwood, who's the Benromach / Gordon MacPhail sales manager, brand ambassador, that sort of thing, my ex-colleague as well. So I'm going to be sitting down with a chat tomorrow night, and then you'll be able to watch that video, and if you want, purchase a pack if there's any less by the time you get to it, or if you've got a pack already, you'll be able to watch it. But the Ardnamurchan, it was myself and Graeme MacKay, who is the, again, sales manager, brand ambassador, but also heavily involved in the blending process, actually putting these whiskies together, as you'll see. Now, I've broken this down into chapters as well. So there's going to be the introduction about Ardnamurchan and Adelphi Distillers, and how they're intricately linked. Then we'll also have a look at each individual. So if you want to jump to a particular one, so if you've got the pack, or you just want to know the information about, say, the Paul Launois, look at the notes underneath this video, and that will have the timestamps where you can jump to that particular one. When we look at the MacLean's Nose, there's also a bit of a chunk where Graeme talks about kind of his history and how he became involved with Ardnamurchan. It's absolutely fascinating stuff. It's really good to kind of get the people behind the brands and their history and how they've become involved in it and why they are so passionate about what it is that they do. I've separated that as a little chapter, but I do recommend watching it as well, because Graeme's absolutely fantastic, and it's really interesting to kind of find out where he's come from and how he's been influenced by the industry as a whole. So, as I say, the Ardnamurchan packs are now sold out, unfortunately. But if this does prove successful, I will probably be doing similar things. So like I said, the Benromach one's coming up, of which there are still packs, but I'm also looking at potentially some other distilleries, not just Scotch either, and maybe not even just whiskey, but actually kind of doing a conversation with those brand owners, brand ambassadors, makers, that sort of thing, but making it available to everybody. Normally when I do a tasting event, I record it and then I lock it on a private link on YouTube, so that just the people who paid the tickets for the tasting event can see it. What I want to try and do is kind of open it out a little bit to everybody else as well. So if you do like this video, do let me know, and if you've got any ideas of kind of like ones that I can do in the future. And as I say, the MacLean's Nose, the Core, and the Sherry Cask Reserve release, the new one, are in stock and available from www.spiritspecialist.com. I will now hand over to myself and Graeme. And don't forget, chapters are underneath if you do want to jump to a particular thing, because as you've already seen, it was only supposed to be about an hour long, we said, when we were going to get together, and it ended up being like 2.5 hours, I think. But my word, there's some absolutely fascinating information in there. So if you can watch the whole lot, I do recommend it. Right, over to me. So thank you for joining me, and hopefully people watching are going to kind of get plenty of information from you. So can you give me like just kind of a brief overview in terms of, well, the history of Ardnamurchan, but then also how that ties in with Adelphi, because I think there's still a little bit of a confusion in terms of like, what's Adelphi, where does Ardnamurchan fit in, that sort of thing. I'll kind of throw pictures and bits and pieces up sort of as you're talking along, and I'll kind of edit those in. But yeah, if you can give us an overview on Ardnamurchan and Adelphi, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, great. So I guess the first thing to say is they are one and the same, but there are two sides to the same coin, I guess. So the Adelphi side of the company comes first, and that's got history going back as far as 1826. It used to be a distillery in Glasgow, right down by the Clyde, and it was the Loch Katrine Adelphi distillery. Water was supplied from Loch Katrine, which is in fact still where Glasgow gets its drinking water from. And we had the distillery there. It operated for a number of years, and it had an industrial accident, essentially. So it was an old vertical style distillery. The washbacks were a level above the still room. One of the washbacks collapsed, domino effect, floor collapsed, and wash went flying down the street, a flood of kind of beer, essentially. And it became known as the Great Gorbals Disaster. I think 7 or 8 people died at the time, and the distillery never recovered. It was never reopened or repaired fully after that. Wow. So that was in the 1800s. And essentially, we went into slumber at that point. There is an interesting little quirk of history with the Adelphi side, where at one stage, if there is any real hardcore Adelphi geeks out there, they might remember a short period where we bottled Adelphi Limerick bottlings, which were the Irish whiskies under the Adelphi label. We've not done one for a good few years now, but we actually still own the trademark to this day to Limerick Distillery in Ireland. And at one stage, we actually had an English distillery, an Irish distillery, and a Scottish distillery operating in the 1800s. And I believe we were the only people in the world at the time to be doing that. So wow. We've actually retained some of those trademarks, and in the future, I hope once we get on to the chat a bit more, we can talk about future plans and things. But it'd be nice to see the revival of some Irish and some English whiskies under the independent bottling labels. So if we rewind back to shortly after the distillery collapsed and disappeared, essentially, we disappeared for a long time as a company. And then a chap called Jamie Walker, who is synonymous with the company, he's basically the resurrector, so to speak. So he got involved. His original family, well, I think it was his great-great-grandfather, maybe his great-grandfather, used to run the Adelphi Distillery Company, and he decided it would be nice to resurrect it as not a distillery, but as an independent bottler. I know you've got a background in that as well, Ben. Mm-hmm. I've got a little bit of a background in that too, which we can talk about a little bit further on in the conversation. But for those who don't know, I suspect the audience of the Spirit Specialist who are tuning into an Adelphi tasting probably know what an indie bottler is. But essentially, we source whiskey rather than produce whiskey on that side of the business. So on a very, very simple shortcut method, we are trying to find good stuff and put it in a bottle and put it into people's glasses. Of course, in reality, it's a bit more complicated than that. But essentially, the company came back into being 30 years ago now, in fact. So this year, 2023, is our 30th anniversary. So it's quite a milestone for the company. So Jamie tied it back in with the previous heritage of the company, and it started off on a very small basis. I would argue that we are still operating on a pretty small basis in terms of number of releases. The amount of stock that we refuse is very high indeed. We don't like to put our name on something unless we believe it's of the highest quality. And we can talk again a bit further on about the kind of indie bottling world as it is now in 2023. There's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of new guys on the block. There's more and more distilleries saying no to supplying stock to indies. So it's a slightly challenging environment nowadays. And that's what led on essentially to the creation of Ardnamurchan Distillery. So the people, if we fast forward a few years in the history of Adelphi, we then had a transfer of ownership. So Jamie Walker sold the company and a few of the casks that we had in our inventory to gentlemen called Keith Faulkner and Donald Houston.
Yep.
So they both are landowners and business owners out in Ardnamurchan on the Western Highlands. And they, along with Alex Bruce, who is still our managing director, when he was appointed as managing director back then, we were always aware as a company of some of these challenges that might present themselves in the future. And essentially, we decided to create our own distillery. And that's when the discussions happened about where might we place this distillery. So there was actually in the early days a small but kind of meaningful conversation about actually resurrecting the Glasgow distillery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we couldn't do it in exactly the same site. For the trivia geeks out there, the Adelphi distillery has now been replaced with a building with an entirely different mode of operation now, and it is the Glasgow Mosque. So there's not a whole lot of whiskey production happening on that site.
Yeah, that might have been a bit tricky to do that one. So yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, that's right. But there was certainly chat amongst the team and sort of some small exploration into maybe reviving a Glasgow one. In the end, as I mentioned, Keith and Donald had some land out there, and quite crucially, there wasn't a distillery there, to be fair. There's lots of space. There's land to expand to if the distillery becomes very successful and it keeps growing and growing. And the decision was made to build a distillery there. So the very simple way to think about it is Adelphi is the independent bottling side. That's 13 years old. And Ardnamurchan is essentially the modern incarnation of the Adelphi distillery. Same company, same ownership, same managing director, the same staff that make the decisions in both companies and that represent both companies in public. So yeah, on one hand, we're sourcing liquid. On one hand, we're producing liquid. And as we go on, we can talk about how actually those things dovetailed together quite nicely. There's a lot of shared morals and philosophy as a company when it comes to what you release, but you've got two very different strands nowadays in the company.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's a very similar process to what Gordon MacPhail did.
Correct.
Again, it was that sourcing whiskies and sort of accepting the fact that it's not that it's a finite resource, but with the increase in demand of single malt whiskies in particular, a lot of distilleries were saying, no, we don't need to sell it. We'll keep it for ourselves. We'll bottle it up under our own label. And it's that kind of future proofing. And I know with G&M, they looked at, do we build our own distillery or do we buy one? And obviously they went through the route of buying one because they had Ben Romack down the road that was a shell. And it was an existing building that they could kind of rebuild internally. But obviously you guys have gone down the route of, right, let's build our own, and we've got full ownership now. Obviously G&M are doing that now with the Cairn, building their own. And they've now turned around and said, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, they've announced that, you know, they're not going to be buying any more stock, because there's as you're saying, there's too many distilleries turning around and going, actually, no, we want to keep it for ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't going to be any more releases, and it would be the same with you guys. You know, you've got stock sitting there. You know, it's not a tap that just turns off. But as you say, there are more and more independent bottlers out there, because the demand for whiskey is so high, that it's getting tougher and tougher. But if you've got your own distillery with your own product that you're making, then you can just kind of, you've always got that as your revenue source.
That's right.
As long as it's good quality whiskey. And fortunately, you guys seem to have absolutely nailed it from day one.
Well, I hope so. Yeah, and we can talk about that in a wee bit as well. But it's interesting you say about G&M. That was certainly big news. And internally in the team, we had a lot of chat about it, and the day it broke, a lot of chat in the wider industry and from customers. And it'll be interesting to see. I would certainly love, I have to admit, to have a look at some of that inventory. I would have loved to.
Oh, mate,
get some of those warehouses in the back.
It's a gold mine. It really is an Aladdin's cave of stuff that they've got in there. So they're going to be okay for a few years. But it was very interesting. Them making the decision, which wasn't necessarily a surprise, but just the reaction from the industry and the market and everything like that. I would have concerns if I was, if I was an independent bottler that didn't have the backup of the distillery and the brand and everything like that. I think it's going to get very hard, or you're going to be picking at scraps of potentially not great quality as well, which is it's a very interesting conversation. And to be frank, I wouldn't be starting an indie bottler tomorrow if
I had that in mind. And it's a reason why we see those two coming together ever more. We've got North Star announcing a distillery in Campbelltown, and you've got, I mean, to be honest, everyone we can think of, pretty much, there's a lot of them that are going that direction. We've got the Thompson brothers with Dornoch. I've got a wee Dornoch sitting behind me there. The Decadent Drinks with the Whiskey Sponge, and Angus McCrail's teamed up with Johnny McMillan, and there's all sorts of guys doing that now. There's a lot of great indie bottlers out there, don't get me wrong. From a whiskey geek point of view, it's a great time. And some people are doing amazing things. Some people maybe less so, in my personal opinion. That's all. It's a great time to be getting in there, but I can certainly understand G&M's decision. For Adelphi, we don't necessarily have even an iota of the stock that G&M sit on. Well,
I know, because I keep asking you if there's any allocations, and you keep telling me, you keep pushing me back, going, I naturally can't.
That's been my joyous job today. I had my brother staying last night, who's from Inverness, and I'm down in Ayrshire, and he was joking. I was in the office today, as in this office, my home office, and he was joking from the living room, saying, they always, have a laugh at you that you just get paid to drink whiskey and travel the world, and all you've done from basically 9 to 5 is sit in spreadsheets and basically be on the verge of tears about how pathetic the allocations are for the world. I was kind of thinking, come and see this. This is not a shop. This is an entire country that I'm allocating 12 bottles of a new release to. So, that's an interesting one we can talk about more as well. We unintentionally restrict supply, but in a way we're aware we're doing it because of that commitment to quality, and also single cask and cask strength, which is, again, I love playing devil's advocate when we do have some pretty forthright feedback, shall we say, from some people.
I'm sure we've both encountered them in the past.
And hey, I understand it. I totally get it. It can be frustrating to be a retailer, to be an importer, and at the very end of it, to be the customer who's trying to find a bottle when there might be one bottle in a region, you know?
Yeah.
At the same time, I do like to, you know, an example I would use is someone like Cadden Heads and Springbank, who I've got the utmost respect for, one of the high lines of quality in the distillery world and the indie bottling world. But they had that kind of double-edged sword where they had a lot of people moaning at them that they couldn't find the Cadden Head stock. And they decided to react to that by doing a lot of 46% bottlings and vatting a few casks together. And then lo and behold, they get slaughtered for it by the supposed loyal whiskey fans. So it's a difficult one to balance, you know? So I kind of remind people, if you do want us to commit to single cask and cask strength, by and large, then, and I agree, by the way, that's what we are fully committed to doing, then there's a maths problem. That's all it comes to.
Yeah. And it is simple maths. You know, as we both know, the reason you've got the spreadsheets is you're trying to divide one number into a much, much larger number, and it just does not go.
And certainly I can reassure the customers out there who are trying to find it. We put an awful lot of time and effort, you know, hours and hours into trying to divide it fairly.
Yeah,
trying to get it to the right people. And this is true of some of the Ardnamurchans we'll try, which are larger scale but still limited and in demand sometimes. And we really do, as a company, spend a lot of time trying to get it into not just the shops which will have the highest fanfare, but independent shops which look after their locals, their regulars, shops who are getting it into drinkers' hands rather than collectors and things, right? So but that's where Ardnamurchan can kind of step into the picture, and we can probably a good time to talk a bit more about that, where we're on a different scale entirely. We can be doing thousands of bottles at a time rather than 200, 300, 400 bottles for the whole world, you know?
Yeah. So could you give me some just some details about the distillery itself then, if we kind of move into that, just in terms of kind of the setup that you've got, you know, output levels, that sort of thing, you know, where did you start off at, and kind of have you not necessarily expanded, but, you know, increased production to a particular point where you are now from where you first started?
Yeah, so first off, the distillery was built in 2013, 2014. It commenced distilling in the summer of 2014. So we just had our 9th birthday in July there. Nice milestone coming up next year as well. But in the early days, we were on around about 100,000, 125,000 litres a year. Our best years so far, we've just nudged over 400,000 litres a year. Oh. That's with just one pair of pot stills, and typically a 2-shift day, Monday to Friday. Right. Some years we've had some Saturdays overtime as well. But that's about the maximum we can probably do without going to a 24-hour shift.
Yeah.
Location-wise, it's a very rural distillery. It's on the far Western Highlands. The Ardnamurchan name comes from the name of the peninsula. So it is on the mainland, but it doesn't actually feel like it itself. It's single-track roads. It's very remote. Hardly any population there. You know, we're talking over a pretty significant sort of distance. We might have 300-400 people living in a few settlements and some houses in the countryside.
I love the fact you've called them settlements as well.
Yeah,
that's a really evocative term that really suits brilliantly as well. Yeah.
Well, it kind of is, you know, and there's such a history there, even of the old crofts and Highland clearance things. And, you know, I certainly would hesitate to use the word towns anywhere out there. There's definitely villages,
hamlets,
and then there's these little one rows that you drive through sometimes. So the distillery is basically north of Mull, south of Skye, south of Mallaig and Arisaig and things. So it's a beautiful area. There are some logistics challenges associated with that. So when we built the distillery, it was very early on that we decided we'd adopt a green policy and, very importantly, a kind of approach to circular economies as well. It's not simply about, and I really should hammer this home, it's not about sound bites, it's not about greenwashing, it's about doing something that actually, first and foremost, makes business sense. And then, yes, very, very crucially, it makes sense for the environment. If you're building a brand new distillery in the modern era, you just have to do that. Whether you're building it in a city center or not. But for us, for example, very crucially, we are 100% fueled by biomass. So we use wood chip. Now, for anyone who's been to Ardnamurchan, there are not crops. There's not an awful lot of fields. It's a very mountainous, very rugged, hilly area. However, there's a lot of forestry. So the one of the landowners, Donald Houston, who is the co-owner of the company, he also owns a woodland treatment plant, and he owns lots of the woods themselves. So there's already a lovely circular economy there where he can cut down the trees, he can plant more, he can treat the wood, turn it into wood chip, deliver it to the distillery, and essentially we'll get a bunch of wood pulp, and that will fuel the distillery. I believe at the time we were the first Scotch distillery to have no backup. We had 100% reliance on the wood chip. Yeah. And believe me, in the early days, and still in the more recent days sometimes, that does affect production. If the boiler breaks, the distillery stops working. Very simple as that,
Yeah.
So that was a key move. We've got the fact that if you think about that in a more deep level, by using wood chip, we are, on one hand, we are a demand for that wood now. I believe we use something like 160 tons of wood chip a week to fuel the distillery. So if we weren't there, that wood chip would be traveling further into the mainland on these rural roads. If we made the choice not to use wood chip, we would require an oil tanker to come from the central area to the west coast on those rural roads. So all of these have an effect. They're not the things that we shout about first and foremost as a distillery, but they all build into the wider picture of trying to embrace the rural community that we're based in, and they do then have an effect on the flavor because we have to live within our limitations, and the production guys have now become essentially amazing at maintenance, and they know the distillery inside out in a very intimate fashion, because if something breaks, by the time we phone someone like Forsyths to come and help us repair something, it might genuinely take them 4, 5, 6 hours to get there. We may have fixed it already by that point, and we could be, every hour that goes by, you're losing valuable production time. You're losing money, essentially, aren't you? So, the guys have become very good at doing multifaceted jobs. They're not any specialized one narrow focus employers out there that are just, we hire a stillman and that's all you can do. To be able to work the stills, the mash, do some warehouse work, do some joinery, do some maintenance, do all sorts of things.
Yeah. So what's firing your stills then?
So it's steam.
Right. Okay.
We have a large steam producer. It's just the wood chip burns. We get a steam accumulator is the word, and then it's not direct fired. So just classic steam coils there. We've got some of the nerdier things would be like we've got a thing called a water miser, which is a water economizer that was put in a few years ago, and that's greatly reduced the amount of cooling water that we require, because essentially it recycles the cooling water round and round the distillery. It draws in air from the outside and cools it down. So there's a lot of ongoing improvements. I think it's fair to say Alex and the wider company very happy to embrace new technology, and we're kind of at the cusp of some of this new technology. So we're quite happy to embrace it and to, if it works, to ramp it up. If it doesn't work, leave it aside and kind of fine tune as we go. I think that's an important thing to say about the early days of a distillery, is that you don't necessarily, unless you hit the jackpot, you don't start distilling on day one and it's perfect and you've got the recipe correct. You've got, never mind that, you've got the whole operation side correct. It's been 9 years, sounds like a long time, but compared to these 200-year-old distilleries that know what they're doing inside out, there's a lot of tweaking to be done even for years to come.
Yeah, and it's interesting. A lot of there's a lot of new distilleries that are very much going down that kind of, because you've got that opportunity as you're building it to think about what's going on in the environment and to think about the logistics. If you, I mean, I will have put a map up by now, but you are out in the sticks, and as you say, sending tankers to go and send gas or oil or whatever it is you need to do, it's just not practical. It's not cost effective. And if you've got literally on your doorstep a source of heat that isn't technically costing you anything, if you've got the landowner that owns the forestry that also owns the wood mills that can then feed in, it's a very nice loop.
That's right.
So yeah, it makes perfect sense to do that. So you're now doing what you might have said already. So what's your output at the moment?
So I would say solidly for 3 years, maybe 4 years, we've been doing 400,000 liters a year.
Yeah. Okay.
In context, we're talking probably something like 80 ASBs or bourbon barrels every week. So that's that translates after 9 years to about 17,000 casks maturing on site.
Yeah.
So we do.
And you're maturing on site as well, yeah?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. We've nowadays got 6 warehouses, all dunnage warehouses. We have built them over time and expanded over time. And we're committed to 100% maturation. If you were being really technical about it, we have our Adelphi central-based shipment site. That's where the Adelphi casks live. That's where we bottle, label, and dispatch from in Fife.
Yeah.
So there's occasionally maybe 50 or 100 casks that are lying there before they get blended. So we got to get all the little details out in case someone comments.
Oh, there's going to be somebody, I'm sure. There's going to be, well, what about when you do this and all this? There's always one. Normally it's me. Right. So yeah, it makes a change. And so on your bottles you have the QR codes as well. That essentially gives you that full background information. So where is your barley coming from?
So mostly the barley is coming from Fife. We get a lot of people asking who've never been to the distillery will kind of say, do you get the barley locally? And it just doesn't exist. It's as simple as that. However, Alex and his family, the Bruce family, have lived in Fife for a very long time, and they either own some of the fields or they contract out the growing to people in Fife. So we're moving towards probably in the next few years 60-70% of our output being from barley that we produce ourselves.
Okay.
We essentially, I can be very open and honest, we do 6 months of peated barley, 6 months of unpeated barley every year. That's something we can talk about more when we get onto the individual drams.
Yeah.
But we get the peated malt from Crisp. We get the unpeated malt from Baird's up in Inverness. Baird's have just expanded hugely, which has been very helpful. Crisp, unfortunately, had quite a serious fire last year. So they have been out of action for a little while. So that's affected the peated barley industry a little bit in Scotland and beyond. Unless you want some extremely heavily peated malt, then you can maybe get that from the embers somewhere. I think interestingly, one of the future projects is we do have a malt floor in the distillery. We've got a kiln, we've got a pagoda that is real and could be operational, and we do have space. There is a malt floor already in there that could hold about a ton at a time.
And was the distillery built from scratch?
Yeah. It was just
so you built a malting floor, pagoda, etc. While building the distillery. Was there plans to use it, or was it more a kind of?
It was that kind of. You mentioned it earlier in a different respect, but it was future.
Yeah.
If you're building it, it's easier to build it at the time and not use it, and then as it so happens, we're hoping to commission it within the next probably 2 to 3 years. It's easier to do that than go and retrofit it. And again, it's like that with the sustainability. It's much harder for a 200-year-old distillery to retrofit the operation, but if
Yeah.
you're building it from scratch, you can be versatile. So yeah, I think the plans for it have changed over the years, and the cost of barley at the moment is particularly high. So that's taken a bit of a back seat. It's been, I've been with the company for over 3 years now. It's been something that is happening next year, every year since I've.
It's always next year.
That's right. But there are very genuine, tangible moves to make it happen now. There's been people out to the distillery to look at commissioning it properly and to discuss how it might actually work. So quite tight-lipped on what might happen. I doubt that we'll just go for doing a small percentage of the same barley. We'll probably look at doing something like heritage crops, or we do sometimes work with Crafty Maltsters, for example, which is a small-scale producer in Scotland, which is kind of growing these old school traditional crops and making use of them. So we'll do something fun with it. Yeah. But it is a nice little future look at what we'll do. So the QR code will tell you the fields it comes from, the species. So like a lot of distilleries, we are mainly we started off with Concerto, we moved on to Laureate. Laureate is seeing the end of its day, and we're moving on to Sassy Malt now as well. All the same family of malt, but just getting refined a wee bit. We do, crucially, use Golden Promise for 1 month every year, which you'll know yourself is a lower yield crop. It's more expensive, and it has fallen out of fashion because of that.
Yeah.
But very crucially, we think it lends a really oily texture to the dram. So we've not released any. We've been doing it for a month every year for those 9 years. We've got it maturing away in the warehouse. People will have been there and seen casks that say GP on them, and that's what it means. So watch this space again in the future. We don't know what we're going to do with it quite yet, but having tasted some of the drams, there's some noticeably higher texture and viscosity in those liquids,
Yeah. I look forward to you emailing me going, I've just spent all day telling people I don't have enough GP to give them an allocation.
That's right. Hopefully it won't be on that Adelphi scale. We're talking hundreds of casks
yeah.
than a few.
It'll still never be enough.
No, of course.
Right, so let's crack on with the drams then. So I've put the running order together, so that you had no impact on this. So if there is people that are thinking, oh, why did you do it this way? It's on me. It's not on Graeme at all. But the first one we're going to start with is the MacLean's Nose, which is the blended Scotch. Now, I've seen this in some places. I've got it listed as Ardnamurchan MacLean's Nose, but obviously being a blend, we've got other whiskies in there. So is this sort of officially an Ardnamurchan bottling, or would this actually come under Adelphi brand?
It's a little a straddler, if you will. It's it lives somewhere in between the two. So you'll probably have shown some shots on the screen, but people that have seen it, it's in the Ardnamurchan kind of shaped bottle. It doesn't say Ardnamurchan on it, unless it's got it on the very back here. Says the sales guy that should know this, right? But no, it doesn't have it.
We got Charles. I mean, you've got the MN on the neck label that's very similar to that font that's used for the AD, etc. But it's got that feel, but it's not explicitly this is an Ardnamurchan bottling.
That's right. Yeah. So this has been quite a fun one to put together and to release, and to originally to tease people with this MN and things online and see what is it. And essentially, so maybe if I reverse a little bit, I can kind of say that I'm in the blending team at Ardnamurchan. I am a sales guy and a sales idiot, but importantly for those who are watching tonight, it's good to reassure you that I do know this liquid quite intimately. It's not simply me spouting the sales chat that would get told to you. So maybe if I'd reverse, like, kind of why am I here in some respects, the background that I've got is, like a lot of people, you can kind of fall into this industry unintentionally, you know. So I was a bartender, a cocktail bartender in hotels and things like that. And that was fun. I was enjoying it. I had some of the best times of my career there, but it was a late night job. It was quite taxing. It's quite, in some respects, unrewarding. And I decided at some point I wanted to keep booze as my focus. I'd fallen in love already with the process and there's all these extra things around craft alcohol and generally just alcohol production, about cultures and about geography and history and all these scientific things that you can delve into all these little avenues and rabbit holes. And I love the idea that you can never know enough. You can never know everything about it, you know?
Yeah.
And from early on, I decided I wanted to make a full-time go at this, and I didn't know how it would look. And from the bars, I was living in Glasgow, and I was lucky enough to land a job at the Good Spirits Company, which a lot of your customers will probably know. Relatively well-established whiskey shop, first and foremost, but booze shop. The name is a classic Ron Seal business name. We used to joke. It's a shop which sells good spirits, and nowadays wines and beers. So that was an amazing opportunity to broaden my horizons and to really get under the skin of what was happening right across the world of booze, all over the world. I was hosting tastings there as well, and also, I should say, very importantly, I was listening to other people host tastings as well. So whether that was my colleagues, people like Roddy Graham and Matthew McFadgen and Shane Goodbody, or it was the guests, which you'll have on your channels and in the shop sometimes as well, whether it's somebody from a whiskey company, a rum producer, is a winemaker. Everyone who you watch hosting a tasting in public is someone to learn from, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. And you're emulating them and you're refining your approach. But really importantly, you're not being paid when you're hosting the tastings in a shop and you get to do this yourself. You don't care about the brands that you're representing, right? And that's very freeing. There's no bullshit there in terms of the customer worrying about the sales and the motivations of the speaker. You can really just say the facts. You can say some of the nice stories and things if you want to. You can dial really deeply into the spirit and into the recipes and all that sort of stuff. And you can give a very open opinion about what it is. So that was a really good proving ground and somewhere that I, to be honest, probably still would be quite happily working today if kind of some things hadn't appeared on the horizon, that some opportunities that I grabbed hold of. But that was a great place. I've still got a lot of time for the guys. Without plugging another shop too much.
No. When I did my induction with Gordon MacPhail, I spent a day there, and it was marvelous. It was absolutely brilliant, and it was one of those where it was like, yeah, I kind of wish I lived in Glasgow and tried to get a job here. Just brilliant, absolutely amazing place. Yeah,
I will always say as often and as loudly as I can in public, those guys changed my life. You know, really is as important as that. They put me on a certain path. And I'm still on that path today. And I will always have a lot of time and respect for those guys for doing that for me. And even now, probably 6 years since I've worked there, maybe longer. I was in there yesterday delivering an order because I still live near Glasgow. And one of the best things to see and a testament to how good it is to work there, almost everyone who I worked with is still working there those years later.
Yeah.
So it's not just a plug. It is also to say that gave me a real appreciation for independent spirit and beer and wine retail in the UK and beyond. So still to this day, this is a big part of my day-to-day job, is dealing with independent retailers. And I think we have as a company, but me personally, got a lot of passion for supporting the independent retail world in the UK. It's just so satisfying to work in that sort of world. So from there, I went to Carnmore, which is Morrison and Mackay it was at the time. Morrison Distillers nowadays, the old Perth brand, the Mactala brand didn't exist when I was there, but that seems to be doing quite nicely. and the Carnmore independent bottling world. So again, another public plug, but my friend and former colleague Peter MacKay, who worked for Carnmore, he plucked me from the good spirits. He, for whatever reason, I have no idea, he had met me before, and he decided this is the guy that we should hire to come on board and be one of our sales team in the UK and slightly beyond. So he changed my life again, someone else who I have a lot of time to thank. And I had a great time working there. That independent bottling has always been, since I was in the good spirits, a real fascination, I think. Once you open that little door, I remember working in the shop in Glasgow and being like, why do you have, 5 different, whatever it might have been, what I was going to say Lefroy, but who's ever had 5 Lefroys on their shelf in different branding, but maybe a different Speyside dram, a Diageo one like Dalyuen. I said, what's this? And they said, oh, this is independent bottling. These are different companies doing single casks and different ages, different strengths, all that. And it's this little door, you must have experienced it yourself. And it's probably a joy for you to let your customers experience it too. This little underworld of whiskey that we discover. Yeah. And in many cases, you could argue it's higher quality or at the very least more interesting. Mm-hmm. Generally speaking, it's better value. And normally it's made with the whiskey drinker in focus rather than the brand. So an amazing world to discover. And then when you work for an indie bottler, again, the knowledge steps up another level. If you're hosting a tasting and you've got this dram called, Glenbergie today, what's that? I've never heard of that distillery. Yeah. You learn a little bit more about that distillery too. So great years spent there. A lot of love for Peter MacKay and Kenny MacKay, his dad, who's a bit of an industry legend, and everyone who helped me there. And then a few years back, during COVID, in fact, the opportunity presented itself to come and work for Ardnamurchan and Adelphi. I can genuinely say I had a lot of time for Adelphi back then. I've always put them in kind of high regard. And to be fair, that was enough. I would have jumped ship for Adelphi, but then you add in this slumbering project in the background that people are kind of starting to talk about, and you get the opportunity to come on board and launch a new whiskey distillery and a new brand to the world. It's quite a tantalizing prospect. So fast forward a few years, I've been there 3 years now, and we've been lucky enough we don't have a master blender. Alex Bruce has been very good at getting us all involved. So there's a very small sales team. We've got Alex, we've got his sister Antonia, we've got Connell McKenzie, who's the sales director, and we've got Jenny Carlson, who's my marketing manager, and then this guy. And the 5 of us are the world sales and marketing team. And then on the other hand, we're the blending team as well. So every Ardnamurchan product that's not been a single cask, we have created the recipe and settled on it. So great opportunity from a selfish point of view, but also it does mean I can really, over the last few years, I can say confidently, I know the Ardnamurchan spirit as much as basically anyone in the world. So,
yeah, and unfortunately, there are a lot of salespeople, even sales teams out there that the product is the last thing that they come across. It very much is kind of and sometimes you even have to buy the bottles yourself. You don't get sample stock or anything like that, and it really is a kind of, wait, hang on, you're wanting me to sell this product, but I've never had it before, and you're not actually willing to share it. It makes it difficult. So to be involved in technically the production of it is fantastic opportunity. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that's very invaluable. And, I should always mention in public, we're maybe the face of the brand, and we probably take a bit of credit, but like any whiskey distillery, but particularly knowing my team, we've got a hugely crucial production team who is working essentially doing the same thing day in, day out. That's by necessity. They have to be obsessed with consistency at the production level and try their very best to eliminate any variances in that initial spirit. So it does mean when it comes to the final blending process, I've got an easier job, and the team has got an easier job with if they provide us with a nice consistent spirit, we essentially don't have as much to do. You know, we've got an easier job. So always got to shout out the guys, because they are, by and large, quite typical huge Scottish lads who could twist my head off if I don't if I take them credit.
And very much unsung heroes as well. You know, everybody talks about the master distiller, but very little said about the 2, 3, 4 people that are kind of like under them that are really doing the donkey work. And actually, master distillers tend to be jetting off doing tastings and shows and this and that and the other, and it doesn't shut down where they've disappeared. You know, it carries on going in their absence. So yeah. No, it's
and remind me as we go on. We'll maybe touch on it later, but there's an important point to make there, that we actually get the guys out of the distillery, and we in turn go into the distillery and do some work sometimes. So we could touch upon that a bit later. But to get back to the MacLean's Nose, it was a very roundabout way to introduce a dram. Hopefully people can have the opportunity to skip forward if they want to. But it's basically to say that this is how we ended up deciding on a blend to release. So we had the Ardnamurchan, which we'll explore a bit more, but essentially that was established for about 2 years before we decided what we were going to do with this product. We talked about it as a team. We originally thought, so we had a core product, we had some limited edition seasonal products, all of which, or some of which we'll taste tonight. And we wanted to do another core, higher volume product that would be easier to track down, that would be good value first and foremost. And essentially we talked about doing a blended malt to begin with. Can be very open and honest about that. We are quite dynamic because we're a small company. And I just have to hold my hands up and say, we realized that a lot of people are doing damn good blended malts at some very competitive prices. Some of the big guys are doing great jobs on that. And the small guys, you've got your SRV5 from the Thompson brothers. You've got Dumbarton Rock from Dranmore. You've got bigger guys like Springbank with the Campbelltown Loch. There's some really top quality drams there. So we decided, well, let's not scrap that idea. But what is maybe lacking out there is just an old-fashioned blended Scotch with some grain whiskey in it. Fundamentally, it's not all that different. It's a mixture of different flavors, kind of combining to make, ideally, something greater than the sum of its parts. And I do think from initial feedback, it's working in terms of getting people talking. And I really do believe firmly, anything we're trying tonight, anything you try at a whiskey festival, in a shop, if you like it, drink it. That's the end of it. Very, very simple. Who cares what category it's in if you like it, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So MacLean's Nose started to gather pace behind the scenes. We decided to do a blended Scotch. Alex got to work on sourcing some other liquids, some grain, some other malt, and he started off originally with some prototype recipes. And in the end, we sat down as a team to make it. Actually, it was about October last year now. It's taken a little while until we've been sitting on it as a project. But do you know what we did? To let people know a little bit more of the reality, we had a wonderful world gathering of our importers. So usually as a company, every 2 years, we invite a lot of our importers from around the world, and we have a good knees up in Scotland. We spend the weekend together, and everyone goes home with a lovely fuzzy feeling. We've all got to know each other. Quite nicely, they've got to know the other importers as well. We're not, again, it's about that transparency. We're not hiding anything. We've not got certain secrets that, hey, Italy can't know what we're doing in France and these sort of things, right? So it's very fun family style gatherings. We did one in October last year, first one since COVID. 50 people from around the world. Basically, where do you go in Ardnamurchan to fit 50 people? So we hired essentially a castle at Kingairloch Estate. We had a great time. Good drinks on Friday, whiskey tasting, good knees up, the score. Saturday, we introduced, for some people, their first ever trip to Scotland. We took them to Ardnamurchan Distillery an hour away on the coach on some particularly winding roads, and I would say there's some green people got off that bus and thought, what on earth are these people doing to us? But we had a good visit to the distillery. We had another little party on the Saturday, and they all went home or to their next destinations in Scotland. And on the Sunday, we had a cleaning up job to do. And the next day, we stayed on for the Monday, and we did a blending session, and we created MacLean's nose. So it was a fun day. It was a day where we probably in the morning weren't feeling like we're firing on all cylinders, to be fair.
Yeah.
But then once we got started, it was really exciting because we had this basis that Alex had put together, and I think maybe 8 or 9 different variants of recipe that we made. And in the end, as we can expand upon the blending process with some of the other drams, but in the end, the recipe that we've settled on was a very high malt content. It's a 70% malt dram. It's an old-fashioned blend. You know, it's harking back to the days when blends did have more malt than grain, when they were revered as high-quality drinking drams, and they weren't necessarily saddled with this modern-day reputation as kind of cheap and cheerful, and sometimes even worse words said about them than that. But I'll be nice to them, you know?
Yeah, it needs a mixer and this and that and the other. So I'm working on the assumption that you are unable to divulge the exact recipe, the distilleries that have been involved, etc., etc. If we're looking at, say, 70%, what proportion of that 70% of malt is Ardnamurchan? Because it feels like there's quite a bit of Ardnamurchan in there.
Yeah.
What about you know, kind of like regions, that sort of thing? Because it's a very Ardnamurchan-y blend. And it's actually interesting, having taken a sip of the core, is there are very much kind of through lines between, but you get that grain element coming through as well.
Yeah, it's interesting for those who are tasting the drams in the pack. I would definitely do the same, Ben, and try them side by side, particularly with the core. Keep that one out, and that's the center point for everything tonight, where you can take different directions of it, and that's what we basically do as a team. Without being too cagey, I've been trumpeting the transparency that we do. You can scan the QR code, and it will tell you a pretty detailed recipe of sorts. It will tell you every cask which has gone into it. Is it peated? What region is it from? Is it a sherry cask or a bourbon cask? And what size is the cask?
Yeah.
This is the only one that on paper we actually need to protect the recipe. Ardnamurchan, we publish literally every single cask. On paper, or in theory, this is the only one where somebody else could copy it. In reality, I'd be very surprised if that happens. But I can tell you, of the 70% malt, the vast majority is a Western Highlands distillery. It would be pretty easy to guess who that might be.
Yeah.
The other distillery, there's only one other malt in there, and it's a distillery in Campbelltown.
Interesting.
And again, we do publish that on the recipe. Again, you could probably use your detective work and say there's certain distilleries it's more likely not to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, process of elimination. Yeah.
And then there's only one grain in there, so it's a lowlands grain, a single grain, if you will. So actually, in reality, you've got the Western Highlands Distillery. Guess which one? You've got the Campbelltown one, which you can pretty easily guess. And you've got a lowlands grain. So that's actually the order that the three probably appear in as well. I mean, there's a fair bit of grain in there, but you've got this basis of the Western Highlands Distillery. It's very undeniably Ardnamurchan character. It is different though, and it does have the Campbelltown depth there, a little bit more earthy, a little bit more dirty.
That kind of oiliness coming through, and a slight kind of saline-y note as well, which I've always found on Ardnamurchan, but it feels a bit more pronounced on here. That kind of sea salt, kind of almost sea salt caramel, that sort of feel on there as well.
I definitely agree. And the grain is actually just a nice little backbone. We basically treated it like a single malt. You know, it's still bottled at 46%. It's natural color. It's non-chill filtered. It's a 25,000 bottle batch. But on the shelf, you can pick this up for in the region of 30 quid.
Which is ridiculous. Yeah,
I think so. I hope so. And I'm really happy with even taking price and category out of it. I'm just happy, as I said earlier, if it's good, then drink it. Yeah. There's this thing that we can go on about later as well, where when you create a new recipe, we actually just yesterday, in fact, blended as a team the next MacLean's Nose, because this one is coming to an end in terms of availability.
Yeah.
So you've got to line up the next one, right?
Yeah.
So we blended that, and at the end of the day, we were delighted with it. We believe that we've actually improved on it, if anything.
Okay.
But then the reality is, after that teaser campaign, especially with a brand new product, the day before you launch, the day it starts heading out to the shops, you get pretty nervous.
Doubt starts setting in. Yeah.
But I think this has been in the market long enough, and there's been enough feedback from enough people that we're quite confident with what we've got here. Yeah. I do think when you add in the 30 quid price bracket, it is performing as exactly as we aimed it to, which is a good quality, really good value dram, regardless of whether it's a blend or a single malt.
Yeah. So when the next batch is released, is there going to be any differentiation in terms of are you going to market it as a batch 2, or is this MacLean's Nose is ongoing? There will be some development on it, but you're not going to be able to sort of tell which one you've got, as it were.
At a glance, you won't be able to tell, and this is true of Ardnamurchan Core nowadays too. Mm-hmm. But the only way you'll be able to tell is the
QR code, right?
So
okay, interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and it is interesting in terms of consistency with this one and any other batch product we do. A, we're not aiming for absolute consistency, and B, if we're being honest, we probably don't have the skill set to achieve that either, right? Yeah, and this is again when we talk about blends, it is worth acknowledging actually the art of blending and the skill and the craft for these major global players which are pumping out product every day. Johnny Walker Black Label, for example, it's in every bar in the world. I mean, it's very hard to go somewhere. I've been to places as far flung as, I don't know, Costa Rica, and I've been near like primary rainforest, and I've gone into a local bar, and of course there's some Scotch whiskey there, and of course what's it going to be? It'll be a Johnny Walker, or it'll be a Grant's, or a Ballantyne's, or something. And that one, if I taste it in Costa Rica, if I taste it in Glasgow, I cannot, with my faculties, I can't tell you if that is batch 24, 25, 26.
Yeah.
They are, there's a whole different discussion about whether you like the dram, whether it's aimed at you. But if you take all of that out, there's a consistency and a level of quality there that is really quite remarkable. So that's what blending can be about on the global level. I think on the smaller level, we're very happy to have variances. We will touch on this with the Ardnamurchan Core as well, but it should be in the same ballpark. We want it to be in the same family, to have the same DNA, same flavor points being touched upon.
Yeah.
But if it tastes even slightly noticeably different, that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. It means people can try and pick them all up and trace the journey. But we're not worried about the batches actually being indistinguishable. They will look the same, but they will taste a wee bit different from time to time.
Yeah. I've now got a mental image of somebody with their mobile phone picking up individual bottles of MacLean's Nose on my shelf and checking the QR codes, going, no, that's the old batch. Oh, this is the new one, and going through all of them individually, going, that's that batch, that's that one. But the price point is absolutely fantastic. I think it's brilliant, and it also works really well in a Godfather.
Cool.
Yeah, so I've got an Italian restaurant over the road who've just opened a cocktail bar, and I put the menu together for them, and I wanted to do a Godfather, but a smoky Godfather. So it's a Godfather and a Godfather Part 2, which is the smoky version, and the MacLean's Nose is what I've got, because I found sort of in the last 6 months, I don't know what's happened, but amaretto and heavily peated whiskey is totally ticking a box for me.
Cool.
And that works brilliantly as a kind of,
lower end blended whiskey in a cocktail, that smokiness coming through with the sweetness of the amaretto. It's absolutely marvelous. Brilliant stuff.
Great. No, I'm glad to hear it. I think ideally we're just getting started on this one, where it's, I've managed to get some good traction and some really cool bars. Once we get it out into the world and people like yourself and beyond have a play around with it, there's a lot of possibilities. We've tried it in lots of highballs. It's very versatile. I've got an absolutely out of control pile of wild mint that grows out in the fields near me. I'm quite rural out here. And I grabbed a pile and made a sort of take on a mint julep with it recently, and it was really refreshing on the summer's night.
Yeah.
So it's a fun era to play around with. I know it can sometimes get people's backs up, but I like that when
I know it's fun, isn't it? Yeah.
Because again, if it tastes good, that we don't advocate for buying a bottom shelf gin for our martinis, so we should use a good quality product.
Absolutely, very much so. Treat it as an ingredient as you would food, the way I see it. If you get a crap piece of steak, you're going to get a very average meal. If you get a very good piece of steak, you get a very nice meal. But if you get a very good piece of steak and salad, you take that in one direction and you put it with a sauce, or you do this, or you can take that same bit, whether it be a single malt or a blend or whatever, and you can take it in so many different directions. It doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It's just different ways of being able to enjoy the same whiskey. And I'd rather play around with it than just drink the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, totally. And I'd say it's the future. It's a full-time part of the family now. There will be inevitably at some point we'll be able to play around and do, say, a cask strength version or a peated version or a sherry version. These are all just things we've thrown around, but this if it keeps on going as well as it has, it should be interesting.
Oh, PX version.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had.
Oh yeah,
and it's it's fun. The MacLeans is a nice nod to Charlie MacLean, who has been involved in the company for all 30 years, pretty much, and he worked alongside Jamie Walker, and then he's been a bit of a mentor to Alex in terms of a kind of sensory analysis point of view, and telling him a little bit about how to blend, but also how to decide what to buy and when to bottle it and things. He's more of a background in the company now, but he's still referred to as the chief nose. And then the marketeer's dream is that there's a mountain 3 miles away from the distillery, genuinely called MacLean's Nose, So we didn't have to do any contrived naming of that. It was there for us,
Yeah.
And then, the good thing is the big man himself, Charlie, is actually, but if people pay attention to the back, he has written the tasting notes and his signature is on the bottle. Yep. So it's fully approved by the nose. And if you ever come to the distillery, we've got this amazing artist that's friends of Alex and Antonio called Ruben. He's actually painted the mountain itself, and we've had great fun going out there and having a dram of MacLean's Nose in front of MacLean's Nose.
Yeah.
And there's a real satisfying sense of place about that. So
right, okay, so we've got the AD / I always call this AD core. So you initially had, it was AD, and then there was what looked like just a string of numbers, which was essentially your kind of individual batches coming through. So you had these kind of batches coming out initially, and then it was, right, the impression I got was, we've got it to where we want it to be, as in terms of our house style. We've kind of had a little bit of a play around with it in terms of the cask makeup, the breakdown of maturation, that sort of thing. And actually, this is where we want to take it. So this is now, there will be an evolution, but this is our core bottling. So Ardnamurchan AD / nothing is your core bottle. This is your representation where everything else kind of branches off from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. So it's very illuminating, first off, actually, that, and it also explains a part of the change in direction is in the early days, again, wedded to this transparency that we were really proud of, and we still do. We wanted to provide as much information as possible. And actually, it wasn't the distillation date, that it was the bottling dates that appeared. And then the batch for whatever it was.
That was it.
The first or second or third of the year. But I've alluded to it earlier, being a small kind of dynamic company, we do take feedback seriously. And if there's enough volume of the same kind, it's not always going to be positive. There was that sense of feeling that people were being a little bit confused by the branding. So we simplified it. But you are completely correct in what you're saying, in that in the early days, and we talked about this with the MacLean's Nose, we wanted to give people the full awareness that what they were buying was a different product than the previous batch, so that it might actually taste a bit different. We did always embrace that, but I think it was just making it really obvious to people. So in the end, it's a combination of listening to what people said in terms of it is a little bit confusing, and simplifying it. So there's the kind of, if they go into a shop and they see AD, it's easy to buy, it's easy to see, it's quite simple. For those who really prize the transparency and the detail, it's still there on the QR code, and it will tell you the batch and the full recipes and fermentation times, yeast types, all of that kind of really in detail stuff. So you are also correct to say it's the core, it's the flagship, it's the house, whatever you want to call it. It's around about 45 to 50 quid. And essentially we've got pretty much the same recipe every time now. So we've settled on a recipe. In the early days, we kind of put 3 prototypes together and we took them around the whole company, and we went for a kind of crowd vote on what was the best. Something like 2/3 of us voted for the same one, and that was that. Well, we have the inaugural Ardnamurchan ready to go. Crucially, we didn't brand it as inaugural. We didn't price it as inaugural. So we wanted this to be setting out the stall. This is a drinking whiskey. This is not a collectible whiskey. And actually, we will release this as often as we can, and to make sure it's available all the time. This should be the sort of dram like the MacLean's Nose. If you finish a bottle, you can buy another one, and you don't have to despair that it's the last one in the world, you know?
Yeah. Try telling that to the consumers out in the market, but they never listen.
That's right. Sometimes that is the case. Down to specifics, the recipe for the AD core is bottled at 46.8%, so it's a little nudge above it. It's 50% peated and 50% unpeated malt. It would be, if it had an age statement, it would be 5-year-old. It does have 6 and 7-year-old spirit in there.
Yep.
And it's 2/3 bourbon cask with 1/3 sherry cask in the mix, about 65 to 35 ratio there.
Yep. And there's a combination of sherry as well. Am I right in thinking there's Oloroso and PX in that?
That's correct. Yeah. And we will have, in even more detail, we would have some American oak and some Spanish oak casks there. And also the occasional refill cask in the mix too. So, similarly to the MacLean's Nose, we've got the same flavor points that we want to hit with every recipe. But we don't mind if, say, one batch comes across as a little bit more peaty. Sometimes it might be more fruity, more earthy, whatever. But I think this is a great example of that, the more spiritual side of, we set out wanting to make a West Coast dram. Yeah. And then you can get into that, well, what the hell does the West Coast taste like? But you are trying to bottle that, the place that you're based. You're trying to reflect that in your distillery. And if we think of some of the neighbours out there, you've got places like, Tobermory's across the water from us. You're quite close to Skye with Talisker and Torrevig. Campbelltown Peninsula is not too far away. We're leaving Islay to do their thing, very important.
Yeah.
Our peat is not from Islay, it's mainland Scottish peat. So that's very crucial with the flavour. It doesn't have that iodine and the medicinal sort of flavour. It does have that coastal tang. And I think those distilleries I've just mentioned, and maybe people like Ben Nevis you could throw in there as well, they do have a certain earthiness, a farmhousiness, a kind of funk, not necessarily just a sweet straightforward, approachable dram. There should be some depth to it, I think. And hopefully that's kind of what we get. Ideally with this one, if we're on, the peat is very, we talk about things like bonfire embers, it's much more like if you've been beside the campfire and you've got that kind of residue on your clothes in the morning. Sometimes it tends towards almost the barbecued meat sort of style, actually.
It's interesting. It kind of, with you mentioning the likes of, so I always associate Lechek with barbecued meats, whereas Talisker Toravec has a bit more of the kind of black pepper notes, like peppery notes. Ross, like I found Rosse and you guys, a lot of people are kind of, people come in the shop and go, oh, I don't like it peaty, and it turns out that they don't like the iodine side of it. Or if it's where, they like it a bit smoky, but not as intense as Lafroig or anything like that. And my go-tos are Ardnamurchan and Rosse. And I'll get people to try them and then say, how old do you think this is? And most people are minimum 8 years, 8, 10, 12, that sort of thing. And then you can turn around and say, well, actually, it's, 5. And it really is kind of surprising people. But it seems to have almost a little bit, that smokiness it's not quite as barbecue as Lechek, but it's kind of heading that way. It's got a bit of the pepperiness. It's kind of got elements of almost all that West Coast outside of that big intense. There's like cinder toffee in there. There's so much going on. It's just, I love it. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and it's really interesting trying this immediately after the MacLean's Nose, because you can straight away see what that grain element does to it, and just that little influence from the Campbelltown as well, because this has got that smokiness, but then there's that rich texture to it, that sort of weight and depth. It's just it's and I think, to be honest, I don't think I've appreciated the weight that it's got before until I had it next to the MacLean's Nose straight away.
Sure, it's quite evident, I think. And
it's really up front.
It's a really important point about the texture. We talk about the nose and the palate with drams all the time, but we don't often talk about the texture as much as we should. And we've tried to set that out from the early days, from the production side and the design of the recipe in terms of the new make to promote an oily spirit. And that does actually, in one respect, I think it helps with that, disguising of the youth, where it does fool you into thinking it's a little bit older, but it does carry the finish through as well in a very satisfying way. And the opposite of oily is watery, right? So the oiliness on a good oily dram is just a level above anything that's a bit thinner, and it does help with that finish, and it carries the flavors through. And it's great to hear you kind of alighting on a lot of the points that we've talked about as a team, that we've aimed for some of this, and I'm glad that that's kind of coming together. I've gone back over the years to some of the earlier variants, and some of them are still they've aged really well, but I think the cool thing is every batch that we do, every month that goes by, we're sampling more spirit as a team. We're getting better and better at our jobs, hopefully. And hopefully, as the years go by, even these batch products, the core ones that sometimes people tend to overlook in favor of the Cask Strength limited editions, the core serves a different purpose, and it's just got to be available all the time, and it's got to be up to the level of its previous releases. And ideally, we're actually making a better one every time. And hopefully that's what's happened. So I'm so happy with it. Honestly, it's again, we talked about that nervousness when you launch a new product, and this was their first one back in September 2020. And there's a lot of nervousness about the first ever release. And then you're taking it around the country. I mean, in reality, we're taking it around the internet for a long time. We kind of launched it twice in some respects, because then we went and did it in real life. But the early days was that, right, I'm going to do a whiskey tasting of this, or we're going to submit this to a mixed tasting. Other shops are going to put it as part of their lineups. Will you get laughed out of the room? Do you actually deserve to be on the same table as some of these well-established drams, and some of them which are at the same price point.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I'm very happy to stand there, confidently and say, similarly to you, as a blind taste, tell me if you like this, tell me how old you think it might be.
Yeah.
And generally, people tend to be quite impressed with it, which is, it's very reassuring, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. I think that the weight definitely is a factor in giving it that impression of it being older than it is.
Mm-hmm.
That silkiness that's coming through.
That's right. And even with fully unpeated Ardnamurchans, we've occasionally done a single cask of just unpeated bourbon, and I'm lucky enough to have tried a lot of them in the warehouse, and there's nothing to hide behind with an unpeated bourbon.
Yeah.
And even then, there's the 5-year-olds and beyond. There's none of that new makey, really malty, biscuity cereal note that you still get with some new distilleries that are out there, and also just with some of our younger stocks that are in the warehouse. 5, 6, 7 years old seems to be a nice sweet spot for it just now.
Yeah. And I'd be fascinated to see how it progresses over time, because I do wonder. I've noticed, distilleries seem to have almost like a peak in terms of aging, and for some it can be a 21-year-old, but for others it almost seems to be you get to a 12-year-old, and that's where it starts to not necessarily tail off, but it starts to lose the character that makes it so individual. And I'll be fascinated to see how this, because it's so good young. It's almost like it keeps getting better. How much better can it get before it naturally has to just sort of lose a little bit? And it feels like this could be one where actually it's it's a better whiskey at say 10, 12 than when you get to 21, where it's a great whiskey, but it loses that sort of unique character that makes it so bold. I did a vertical Bamor tasting where the 17-year-old was the point where once you got past that, we did a 21, a 25 and a 30, and it was like, it's good, but God, that 17 is absolutely amazing. And I still personally kind of think Ben Romack is maybe 10, 15 or somewhere in between there, but past that point, again, still good, but it isn't as good as I'm really intrigued to kind of see where this peaks almost. Because it's doing so well now.
That's it's the great unknown, really. But there's that optimum between any whiskey you release and any one we make, whether it's an indie bottling or an Ardnamurchan, it should always have balance, in my opinion. The most satisfying drams taste of the distillery they come from and the wood, but they don't overtake each other, So it'll be interesting. On that note, we've tried to plan for that. We've tried to do our best to allow for future long-term aging by slowly ramping up the refill wood policy as well. So we started off at about 15% per year, and we're up to about 25% per year going into refill wood. However, we've already released a few refill single casks, even at 5 years old. But it will be interesting. There's some casks there that I've tried that definitely aren't anywhere near the optimum level yet after 5, 6, 7 years. And I've tried some 8 and now 9-year-old spirit, and some of it is still just, particularly if I think of, say, peated bourbon Ardnamurchans, they're after 5 years or so, they seem to kick into another gear of complexity. And they start off very serviceable, very good and satisfying. But now, after certain amounts of time, a 6-year-old compared to a 5-year-old can have quite a leap. So it'll be interesting. We don't know, frankly, but
that's the fun
try
of it.
Try to plan to have that optimum going as long as it can, and have the variety in the warehouse to give you those options to play with as a team, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at the next one, which is the Ardnamurchan. So this is your sherry cask release. So is this an ongoing release or limited batch?
For now, it's not a one-off. and it's not ongoing either. It'll be maybe an annual release. It might be more than once a year. The honest answer is we haven't decided. That's not me being cagey, but I would like to think it's been quite a success. It's the most recent release that we're trying tonight. We've got 3 of them that were released on the same day that we're trying tonight. But we held off. This is the first release we've ever done, which was 100% sherry matured. I think if I were to categorize this, it's the most obviously crowd pleasing of what we've released. And I really don't mean that to take anything away from it. We've not played it safe, but it's got the color, it's got the sherry, it's got a bit of peat. So what we've got here is, if you hold them both up, I mean,
so that's the core against the sherry. I mean, it does exactly what people that like their heavily sherried whiskies does.
Yeah, and with the best will in the world, and whiskey geeks and myself, I love to tell you that color doesn't matter, and I go purely on the taste. But if I put these out on a table at a whiskey festival, I know which one people are going to go flooding with, right?
Yeah.
So, but with that in mind, what we actually have released here is 50% ABV. So that we tried it at various strengths. That one worked really well texturally. Still had the heft of higher than 46, but cask strength was a little bit more tannic and a little bit more intense on that finish. In the strengths, in the sherries, we've got PX and Oloroso, and peated and unpeated spirits. And every cask is from 2018. So actually, this is the younger it's younger than the core. So it's quite an interesting one in that regard. On the shelf,
it a 50-50 split, peated, unpeated?
It's not 50-50, and the honest answer is I can't remember the split off by heart.
If I was professional, I would have gone on the QR codes and got all that first, but I just wanted to test you instead.
Same here. If I was professional, I'd remember every recipe properly.
I'll put it up on the screen. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you can do the
post. We'll fix it in post. It's fine.
I'm trying to be a politician and just sit here and spout out lies the whole night.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So it's sherry heavy, but it's not heavily sherried, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think on looks, you think it's going to be quite a sherry bomb, but what we aimed to do as a team was to have balance. And actually, I think the color can actually fool you into it's going to be a big, full, tannic. It's not sulfury, but you might think it's going to be. But I think actually in reality the distillate is coming through really strongly. The sherry's there, of course it is, but I've been really happy with. We've been out on the road with this at tastings quite a lot recently. We were at the Whiskey Fringe as a team in Edinburgh all weekend. This weekend just passed, and it was great to just roll this out and get people tasting it, because this is a bigger batch than we've done with some of the limited ones as well. So it's been really good to have relatively affordable, ideally 60 to 65 pound on the shelf, and hopefully good bang for your buck again. But it's a sherry dram that I think delivers full flavor and richness, but you can have more than one dram of it. It's not it's not going to blast it away.
It's not got that, for example, Abelard Bounar, which is that really intense dark fruit. It's more restrained than that. And I don't know if it's because you've said the word tannic a couple of times, but I'm getting a hint of dryness, which is almost, if it wasn't I knew what the makeup was, I'd almost be saying, is there a bit of red wine cask being used in this?
Right.
But I think that's that slightly higher ABV. I think it's being at 50 is just bringing us just a slightly drier edge in. But it's not as fruit cakey, a Christmas cakey as I think, like you say, looking at the color, people would necessarily expect. And I mean, we both haven't. I would have put it up on screen right now, so we both don't know. I would hazard a guess. There's the proportion of peated to unpeated favors unpeated slightly. Because it doesn't feel as it doesn't feel as the smokiness in there doesn't feel as intense as it does say on the core. It doesn't feel as upfront because you get more of that sherry coming through. But yeah, it's
the fun ones put together. When we get together to do any blending, but particularly for a new recipe, we sit around in the boardroom and we basically line up a bunch of single cask samples. And at the beginning, it's just 5 of us going on nose. We'll have an idea of, Alex is kind of the master of the inventory. So he's got the laptop open and he's sort of saying, right, so we're going to aim for 2018 stock. We've got a lot of we've got availability, and we think ideally that'll still be tasty at that age. So we start off with the unpeated Oloroso, and we'll say, right, let's aim for, and this is just off the top of my head, maybe 10 unpeated Olorosos as a base. So you just get the single cask samples, and we say, right, yes or no. And at this stage, it's not heavy analysis. It's not
kind of working on your gut.
It's not. Yeah, it's just is it good or is it? It's not. Is it not good? Is it too young? Has it got any faults? But also importantly, is it too good? Is it actually a single cask potential, or is it one that would be better if we left it in cask for a few more years? Are we going to take it out too early in some respects? So at the end of a few hours, you've got your little prototype bottle. You've started to mix them together, and you have a taste, and then you can start tweaking it. You mentioned cooking earlier, and I think it's very similar in that respect, where if you want to up the spice, what do we want? Do we want to up the buttery quality? Do we want to up the fruitiness? Do we want to up the earthiness? And how do we look for that? Do we get unpeated? Do we get PX? Do we get Oloroso? Maybe an American oak might bring something different than a Spanish oak. So at the end of the day, you've got about a litre or so of a prototype, and you tweak it. You get a few different versions, 5, 6, 7, 8 versions sometimes, and we taste it as a team. We get really deep on the analysis at that point, and you essentially think you've signed something off at that point. And you'll wait probably a few hours, or ideally you'll wait till the next day and come back in fresh and have a real good go at it. And try and be really critical, try and strip it apart, try and be negative about it, and try and see any faults, any shortcomings. Eventually you land on the recipe, you sign it off. If it's a brand new one, that's all you've got to compare it with. If it's the AD core, if it was the MacLean's Nose batch 2 the other day, final kind of quality controls, as it would be, you pour a blind tasting of the 2. So we actually do an odd one out test, or an ABB test, where we'll do 2 of the same, 1 of something different, and we'll go to the other 4 and say, tell me which one is the odd one out. And it sounds easy, but in reality, you can be very confident, and you can be humbled very quickly in blind tasting. Right?
Oh, blind tastings are brilliant, man. And any blind tasting, it's absolutely the way forward.
Totally, And we've touched upon it with doing it for people at festivals and tastings as well. But as a team, it's really good to, the final level of control, as I say, is ideally we want to, and we did it with the MacLean's Nose, where you can't distinguish the 2, or you get it wrong. So actually we get what we think are 5 people who know Ardnamurchan very well, and we've just literally made it. We've just put the recipe together, and I know the first batch very well, and you'd love to say, batch 1, definitely. And then I'll say, right, this is the one that we made today, and it'll be like, wrong. And you might be a bit embarrassed, but the final result is good. I'm glad I got it wrong, because they're close enough that I couldn't tell the difference. Job done. Sign off the recipe, lock in those casks, and start the process of eventually getting it out to market and into the shops. So the sherry came together probably a bit quicker than some of the other recipes. We fell on a recipe we were all happy with fairly quickly in the day, and then when we went back to it, it was still delivering, and we were happy with it, and it was done. So when we come to batch 2, we will have batch 1 to compare it with. But the early signs are that it's going down well. It's doing what we wanted it to do. And for a while there, it was making a lot of noise online. You know, it was popping up everywhere for a wee while there. So
yeah,
pretty happy with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know the guys at so Joe Clark, the distiller at Filey Bay, was sort of saying, you know, you're a new distillery, and if you're not doing peated, people say, well, where's your, you know, are you doing a peated version? Where's your peated version? Because you're already peated, it really is a case of, oh, well, where's your sherry one? That's it was almost like that was the one string that was missing to the bow, was that, or if only we could get a heavily sherried version, because that seems to be, that's what people want. You know, it's either peated or heavily sherried, and if you can combine the two, you're probably onto a winner anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. But, you know, we were aware of that too, but we also want to be brave enough to put the distillate rather, front and center, and not to try and hide it behind heavy casks and things. And the temptation is always there to just do an easier dram, right? That will still probably go down well by and large, but it was fun to put out bourbon-led ones. And, you know, we will definitely release an unpeated bourbon batch at some point. We've not worked on it yet, but we're all keen to do it as a team. And I think it's to be applauded when other distilleries do that as well, where it's bourbon heavy and it's relying on there's not anything to hide behind, you know. For us it was the sherry that a lot of people were clamoring for. The sherry single casks and things have always performed well, but it was fun to do. But again, it's just a little limited thing, and when it's gone, you'll need to wait until there's something else in that world coming out in the future.
Oh, people can't wait though. That's the problem.
Indeed.
That's the problem. Okay, so let's go on to, I mean, probably the most sought after of your releases, I think. Certainly speaking of experience, is the Paul Launois. So this is the third Paul Launois release. So I opened just too late for the first release. I think it had already gone by the time I'd opened and we'd started having discussions. But fortunately, and this is what I quite like about, with you saying sort of batches and things like that. For example, Filey Bay peated batch 3 has just come out, and I've kept some of the sample stock that I've got within a view of being able to try them all side by side. So I've still got a bit left of the AD 0622.
Cool, nice.
So I can try that side by side with the 2023 release. So this is just an AD Paul Launois. We've got none of the dates of the bottling and things like that. It comes wrapped in. So this is is this new for this year? The paper.
It is.
Yeah. So what's the story behind this? Because I did notice that you put this on social media.
It's quite fun.
I've completely forgotten it, but it is very, very cool.
Actually, it comes wrapped in my face.
So right? So hang on. Oh, I need to guess what your face is now, don't you? So is this you? Is this the tasting table or the blending?
This was us. This was us being depicted blending last year's batch.
Where are you?
So I'm over to the left.
I don't want to offend you.
I'm not the female with glasses on. So I'm over. That's me there. Yes.
Oh, that one there.
Yeah. So
you're looking good.
Why? Thank you. I look good in kinetic pictures in black and white.
Put that way up.
So it's been very fun. This is the work of Sarah Launois, who is
right.
So she is an artist. She designs their labels. She's just a professional artist in her own right.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah, that's right. So if we reverse to how the collaboration kind of came about, Paul Launois is a champagne house in France, of course, and they are very small. They're like-minded. They
quite young, I seem to remember as well. Doing a bit of reading up
similar
on
age
them.
to us.
Yeah. Very like a new one, but already kind of had a really good reputation.
Yeah, they're well established, and they're in a very sought after area. And what we have is Paul is actually the name of I think he's probably 11 or 12 now. He's the son of Sarah Launois, the artist, and Julienne Launois. The two of them are the winemakers. Julienne comes from 4 or 5 generations of champagne makers in the same town. And he had worked in the industry since he was a child, and they opened a very small scale winery where literally they are the 2 staff most of the year until it comes to harvest. And they had reached out through a mutual friend of Alex, who's in the champagne world. They were looking for a whiskey distillery to work with, to mature whiskey in their casks. And this guy thought of Alex. And I think, to be fair, in the early discussions, we were a bit reticent. You know, if you think of Adelphi, and now further on with Ardnamurchan, we're quite traditional with cask types as a general rule. Adelphi, for example, I can't actually think of a non-bourbon or sherry cask release that we've ever done with whiskey. Distillery-wise, bourbon and sherry is our bread and butter at Ardnamurchan. We do have the odd other cask type, Madeiras and some rum casks and things like that. We've got no red wine casks. We've got a handful of port casks. It kind of sets out our stall without me, you know, really making it obvious. That kind of sets out the whiskey styles that we like and the maturation styles that we like. So this was a little bit of a curveball, and we thought, I don't know if we should do it. To be honest, we probably thought Alex would just say no. But because they're so small, they only produce 10 casks of still wine every year. So it wasn't as big a risk as taking a container load of 200 rum casks, and it turns out to not work sometime down. And you wasted your time and money. So we took a punt on them. And back when we first launched in the Zoom period, we did the inaugural, and we sent out a little pack of minis around the world. So there was 4, and we had the inaugural, the AD core of what it became. We had a sherry cask and we had a bourbon cask, and it was designed to give people an idea of what else is maturing away. So Alex said, why don't we put in one of the champagnes and see how it's received around the world? And it really was genuinely quite an offhand decision. And when we sent it out and we did the Zoom tastings, the one that a lot of people were clamoring for was the Paul Launois. And it became really, really sought after. And I think it's fair to admit that accelerated our kind of plans to release one. We moved it up the line of releases quite quickly. So what we have is a very close team, which is us, and now Julienne and Sarah, who are the husband and wife. We have become a proper collaborative effort every year. So last year and this year, they have flown over to Scotland, and we've driven them out to Ardnamurchan, and we've done the blending of this particular whiskey together. So they've joined us. We've all, as 5 of us now, we've all visited their winery at different points, and we've filled in the full picture together as a team. So they bring very valuable experience in their side of it. And like-minded is the word that I keep coming back to. It's important to stress the collaboration of it. It's not simply, we sent them an email, we wanted a wine cask from Champagne, we chose someone out of a hat, and we work together by email, and we blend it and send it back to them. They come over, we go to theirs. We regard each other as quite close friends now. So that was the label was a nice little extra touch. Sarah was in the boardroom scribbling away like we all were. We thought she was just making tasting notes. And then myself, Connell and Alex, we actually drove to Champagne last year. I had to go home. They drove all the way to Jerez, by the way, which is quite the adventure.
Nice.
Yeah, it's all in the name of cask research and firming up.
Of course. Yeah. Networking.
Indeed, that's the catch-all term that always works. So when we went there, Connell and I were wandering around, and Sarah said, "Let me show you this." And she opened the door to a little studio, and she had this huge print, not even a print, sorry, a painting of what is now on the tissue wrap there. And this is her style. She has this very it almost looks like multiple pictures. So you can see me there like 3 times, and Connell's there a few times, and it's capturing the movement. So honestly, we were blown away. Like, I think Connell and I both got quite emotional, because it was like, wow, in hindsight, you've captured a piece of the company history here. At the time, as happens, you don't think much of it. You just work away for the day, and it's fun, and you move on. And then we go to France, and bloody hell, this picture's here. That's amazing. And she's finished painting it, and we now have it hanging up in the boardroom at Ardnamurchan Distillery. The full color work. So just as how dynamic we are, when we were deciding how to market this one, and we said, hey, do you think the tissue guys could put a print of Sarah's work on the wrap there? So that's what we've done. So it's a one-off. It won't be done again. Just a little bit of fun. And it's a nice little nod to the kind of team effort that we have there. Now, in terms of,
just going to fold this up so that I can get it on eBay, just because you've just said it's
right.
one off.
Yeah, I'll sign it for you as well. Just to
brilliant! That'll be worth even more. I can send my kids to college now.
Now, in terms of
in terms of the whiskey, then,
that's more important. But I do always want to. It doesn't change the flavor, but honestly, it is important to stress we put a lot of time and effort into choosing our partners.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, having set up the partnership, the 3 recipes have been largely the same. They're all based with an unpeated Ardnamurchan base.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 100% unpeated spirit. It starts off its life in first fill bourbon. So these are finished in the white wine casks. If we're being strict about them, they are Chardonnay barriques from the Champagne region. So actually, with their casks, we only get 10 every year, and they have, to get really nerdy, they have 5 different toasting levels of plus and medium and minus and all this. And when you combine them together, it can actually be quite a fun result. So the first year we had a sherry in there as well. And the last 2 years we didn't do a sherry. We actually, as we got to grips with it, we thought it worked better, and it was a truer representation of the flavor of their champagne with just a little bit of bourbon. We nearly, and this, myself and my colleague Jenny, really wanted to bottle the 100% champagne casks with no other casks at all.
That feels like a risk.
Well, we were outvoted, frankly, and that's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
and I'm very happy to concede that. That's what a nice uneven number in the team does. If we're on the fence, then we take a vote and you just accept it. And we had a final 2. There was the champagne plus 1 bourbon, and there was 100% champagne cask. So the one we've ended up with this year is the wine cask. So bourbon for 5 years, the wine cask for about 15 months, and then there's 1 fully matured first fill bourbon in there as well.
Right.
I think if we're being specific, if it only had the champagne casks, and again, please don't shout at me, that's just a shortcut. Wine cask from Champagne.
Yeah.
They were all 7-year-old spirit for the first time this year, and then it's actually a 5-year-old bourbon. But the bourbon just softens that wine character, gives a bit of a longer finish to it. But I do think people often ask, what does the wine cask bring? And it really is that buttery Chardonnay quality. It's bready. It's yeasty as well. It's almost that malolactic character to get a bit more wine wankery about it.
Yeah. It's and I will be brutally honest. It's the one that it's the one I've struggled with the most out of the whole Ardnamurchan range. But I'm not a massive fan of Chardonnay anyway.
Right.
So I've always struggled, particularly with, and this is from back in the Odd Bins days of when it was like, because this is 20 years ago, but that was when everything was Aussie, buttery, oaky Chardonnay. I struggled with it. I wonder what it would be like with virgin oak casks instead of bourbon.
Yeah.
But I also wonder whether that would be slightly too vanilla-y.
Yeah.
But it's so distinct, and it's so different to. Well, that's kind of what I love about it, is the fact that it's so different to all of the others.
I'm certainly happy to admit, I think this is the most divisive one that we released.
Yeah. No, I can see that. Absolutely, yeah.
Get some people adoring it. Yeah. Pardon me. And you get some people who would say, "Yeah, I'm happy to not buy that and not try that again."
Yeah. It's. I mean, I think you don't get many white wine finished whiskies anyway, or any kind of like whiskey involved with white wine. The only one I can really remember with any kind of clarity was that old Glenmorangie Chardonnay cask. And that was, I think they did it differently and it's better. But the one I had, which would have been literally 20 years ago, was absolutely dreadful. But that was like you'd added whiskey to a glass of wine that still had a bit left on the bottom.
Sure, yeah.
So it's a hard, it's a difficult type of cask and a flavor profile to work with whiskey. And I think it's actually it's me trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
because there's times when I try it and go, yes, get it. And other times I think it's because I'm such a fan of the core and the other ones. It's almost pulling me away from. It's pulling away from that kind of the Ardnamurchan-iness, because you've got that added wine, that wine cask element. But it's brilliant that you've done that you've kind of taken that different direction with it.
It's a fine line with any cask finish or different cask, and that's the fun. I think that as I say, I kind of touched upon it earlier, that I like people who are happy to kind of stand by what they release and to not necessarily try to please everyone. And we're very happy to do that. I think that's, as we're slowly building out this range and this portfolio of whiskies, they should all stand for something. So there's no point in us having 6 releases a year if they all taste pretty much the same, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
I think if you like it, you try and buy it once a year. If you don't like it, probably someone else will be quite happy to have an extra bottle available in the world.
Exactly. To be fair, every time I've had the Launois in, it's never even reached my shelf. I've always been oversubscribed for it. I get the emails going out going, "Are you getting any in?" Because they've just announced it on social media. I'm like, oh god, here we go. Right, Graeme, email.
That's right. We'd love to do more, but the reality is that we are restricted by the cask supply, so it's 10 every year. But I should say, for those who are desperate for more, when we empty these casks, so now we've emptied roughly 30 over the years, we refill them with new make spirit, so for full-time maturation. So there will come a time, if we monitor it and we're happy enough with it, that we might be able to do larger volumes. But it's certainly, I think you were right. The very first comment you said is it's probably the most sought after. Yes, it's the most limited. I think it is quite distinct from a lot of other drams that are out there at the moment. And whether you like it or not, whole other conversation. But honestly, as a producer and as a team, I know we're very happy to release whiskey. It's counterintuitive sometimes, but we are happy to release whiskey that we know not everyone's going to like. That's fine, absolutely fine.
And one of the great things about it is that if somebody said, "Can you get any Paul Launois?" No, it's all gone. Can you recommend anything similar? No. there's nothing else like it. And
fair play.
And it's always going to be the ones that stand out. That you've literally got something. I could say unique. I wouldn't be able to pick anything else to go, well, if you like that, you could like this. It's so distinctive. And I think I love that because of it.
Cool.
Exactly because of that.
Nice one. No, I'm glad to hear it.
So, the penultimate. So this is now, is there any of this left available? Because I've actually sold my last bottle, so I don't have any left on the shelf. So this is the AD 0922 Cask Strength that was out.
It is now a fallen soldier that we are sampling.
Oh dear. So this is, but
we've blended the next recipe is
Yep.
on paper and signed
Yeah.
off. So there will be the sequel coming out in a little while. Probably, I wouldn't even want to say a date, to be honest. I know it's
Yeah.
but certainly this year.
Oh God, don't say a date because I will get phone calls and emails. And you said it was going to be out and all this. Like, yeah. So is this your second Cask Strength release? Second Cask Strength release, isn't it? Yeah.
They both came out last year. So there was 0222 and 922. And this is a convention we've kept with some of the limited ones. You saw the Paul Launois where it's had a bit of a Botox injection on the label. There's been a bit of a facelift on the sherry and the Paul Launois. That'll continue to happen with the rest of the range now. But the Cask Strength, back in February last year, we put the recipe together. It went really well. It sold out really pretty fast, faster than we expected. We probably thought this would be an annual release, and we did another one straight off the bat in September. So what we have here is very much in line with what I was saying about distillery flavor being front and center. We talked about Benromach earlier, and I think what we've ended up with here, unintentionally, is a good alternative to the likes of your Springbank 12s, your Benromach Cask Strengths, these West Coasty style of drams, which I do think Benromach fits into. It's not on the West Coast, but it's got that funkiness to it. This is basically the big brother or the big sister of the core.
Yeah.
So if anyone's still got the core in the glass just now, I would go back to it when you pour this one. And this is, if I make room, I don't want to waste the Paul Launois, Ben, because look.
Oh.
This is, as you can see, not that well branded, because this is actually a remnant from the blending session this year. So I've not got my bottle.
It's got that touch of oiliness. It's got that thick texture.
Mm-hmm.
It is. It's got all that characteristics of the core, but just again dialed up to 11.
Yeah, I like that way to describe it. And it's so what we have here is when we put it together, we decided all we decided was we're going to do a Cask Strength Ardnamurchan, a batch of it. Yes. Then you get into the conversation of what will it be, what will people expect, etc. So the final result was, as you just said, kind of amped up. So you've got, compared to if we go back to the core, it was 50-50 peated and unpeated, and it was 2/3 bourbon, 1/3 sherry. So this one is 50 casks in the recipe. 40 of the casks are peated bourbons, and then you've got 5 unpeated bourbons and 5 sherry casks. So essentially, much more bourbon, much more peated whiskey. I'm not actually going to describe this as a heavily peated dram, by the way, and a little bit of sherry, 10% sherry instead of your 35% in the core, plus more booze as a Cask Strength dram.
Yeah,
so it's about 58.4, I think. Yeah.
Hang on. Yep.
So, yeah, I think actually on the nose, barely any peat, if I'm honest. I think, in my experience, a lot of people have been kind of lulled into this. It's earthy.
It's got I get a very slight petrol-y tang, but there is that sort of there's the earth. The best way I can describe it is it's like super high cocoa content dark chocolate, really earthy dark chocolate, but also slightly damp earth that's had a bonfire on it. So there's been a bonfire on bare soil, but then it's rained, so it's sort of wetted it down as well.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And actually, it's something we've not talked about too much tonight, but there is this secondary or tertiary flavor, however we want to describe it, but there's a line right across all Ardnamurchan spirit that we've identified that there's a menthol quality there too. There's a eucalyptus-y kind of aloe, in fact, sort of thing.
That petrol-y note is more menthol-y. It's menthol. It's not mint, but I was kind of going more petrol, but it's that really intense eucalyptus.
Yeah,
almost like aloe. You know how eucalyptus can be a bit like aloe vera. That sort
absolutely.
of yeah.
It's got the, if it went too far, it'd be Vicks.
Yeah. It certainly clears your nose. Yeah.
But so you've got the brightness, you've got the fruitiness that's already there in Ardnamurchan, the earthiness that you mentioned with that damp sort of, the pungent quality. It smells a bit sheepy. It's a bit It's that damp wool almost.
Yeah.
Then on the palate, that sort of metallic tang straight away, and it's got that peat. Very, as I said, I made it clear there, but to expand on it, it's not heavily peated.
No.
So to talk about our peating policy, we peat to about 30 ppms,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm glad you've not asked me about ppms, because it can be a bit of a misguidance, because
yes,
that's what it is. It's a guide, and it much more.
I think
is where the peat comes from.
I think I was about to say the problem with the ppm is it ignores where the peat is from. Yeah, and there is still this assumption that the amount of people that come in and go, oh, they don't like peated whiskey, but they do like smoky whiskies. And it's like, hang on, technically that's one and the same thing, but it's this the association with Islay peat, this medicinal TCP element, kind of ignores the fact that peat from the Highland is different to Orkney, is different to Skye, is different to, and even within Islay, there is different, Lefroy uses a different type of peat to Ardbeg, and that's why the two of them are heavily peated and have that Islay quality, but they are still quite individual because it's a different type of peat, and it's this, it's 40 ppm. It's like, but a 40 ppm, say, Lechek is going to be way different to a Talisker, is going to be way different to a, Ben Romack, the peat smoke is 55 ppm at the moment.
So high, conventionally.
Theoretically, that should be peatier than an Ardbeg 10-year-old. But if you put the two side by side, they are completely different, and you'd easily say that Ardbeg was peatier. So the ppm side is sort of a bit of a misnomer.
That's right, and of course that's not even getting into the age of the dram and how much is the peat dissipated and things. So we don't talk about it as heavily peated. I think if you were comparing the ratios of the core and this one, there is more peated spirit in this dram, and there's more alcohol, which probably carries the peat a little bit more. But the nose can be quite an intriguing one because. And because of that, we never intentionally said it was heavily peated, because I don't want people to buy this thinking that it's our version of Islay, and being disappointed. And if you make clear there's some smoke in there, but even with the big Islas, with the really big chunky Islas like Ardbeg and Lagavulin and Octomore and things, any good peated dram, I keep talking about balance. It shouldn't be a one-dimensional taste. So our peated spirit, or if we utilize the peat in a blend like this, which of course single malt, I should say, but in a recipe, a vatting, then we still want it to have other flavors underneath. So I think, honestly, I would say out of all the drams we've done, the 0922 is the one for me that satisfies me the most. The recipe I'm most proud of. That's quite high strength. It's 58%, but I don't think I'm not adding water to it, to be honest.
It drinks really well. I added the first drop that I put in, I added the tiniest drop of water because I thought I'd got a straw that was going to work, and it didn't. So it had like the merest drop in, but I've started to get like a tropical fruit note coming through as well.
There's this kind of like background of almost like rotten tropical fruit. Those papaya.
It's papaya, mango. Sort of almost like that Jamaican rum funkiness coming through a little bit as well. There's so much going on with it.
So I'm really happy with that.
If you said heavily peated, people almost subconsciously, I don't think might pick that up.
You might be
just thinking,
you might be off buying it, or you might be disappointed with the result. And both of those things are not in something I'm looking for, right? So so yeah, you know, I'm really happy with that. It's going to be part of, basically, when it sells out, we'll make another one, and we'll keep that coming. And again, it's what, 65 to 70 quid on the shelf, I think. And it's all, you know, the thing we're just starting to build in here tonight is we want people to drink the drams, and we want them to be affordable. You know, it's everyone's feeling the pinch just now, so we're trying our best to keep these as affordable as we can. So I'm really happy with that. I think this was the first one where we did the second batch, and the one that we released was the same recipe wise. So we made that as the base. We tried some tweaks. We went back to it and we said, do you know what? I can tell we all think the same. The best one was the one we did first of all, right? And we said, it doesn't need change sometimes, right?
So will this be, so you've got your AD, like, because you've sort of got this, I suppose, a slight rebranding in terms of you've got the AD sherry cask release. Will it just be AD Cask Strength?
Yeah, that's what we refer to it internally and kind of when we talk about it as anyway. I've not actually seen the proposed designs for this next one yet, but I think that's the direction we're going in.
Rather than it being a sort of 08, 09, 23, it'll just be it's Cask Strength.
That's right.
Because you already seem to be getting that consistency across all the way through.
Yeah, and again, it's for the full breakdown and transparency are there. So I think that's still an invaluable tool to use.
Yeah, because you can just kind of choose to ignore it and go, yes, I really like it. I like Ardnamurchan. I'm just going to get it. But you're going to get those nerds that really want to delve in, and that there's not many doing quite as intensive a deep dive as you guys can do just by literally getting your camera open on your phone and going to a website.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun when it's when you meet somebody at, say, a whiskey fair, and you say, have you heard of Ardnamurchan? No. And that's cool. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
And you can, in the back of your head, you think, oh, well, we've got some things to show you. You know, we've got a cool location. We've got the sustainability. You've got the traceability. And then hopefully backed up, the most importantly, just by some solid drams. So it's quite a fun journey to take some people on who aren't the converts, and they say, so what's this then? And you maybe half an hour later, they're wandering away thinking, well, bloody hell, that's on my radar, you know? So it's good.
So to conclude our journey then, this is the 0815. So that is the date of distillation rather than bottling, obviously.
Just to confuse you a little.
CK 529.
That simply means cask number.
Cask 529. So this is a single cask, 662 bottles. I love the dog tags on these. I've got one up there because that was the one that I put together for this. The dog tags are super cool.
Yeah, I'm really happy with them too. I've got a few in my little, so mainly my Ardnamurchan collection here. Those pesky Dornick boys have kept in, but other than that, I think they're all Ardnamurchan releases behind me.
They certainly look like it, yeah. So 662 bottles, peated, first fill, American oak, Oloroso sherry butt at 58.1%. So this was the same day as the sherry cask release and the Paul Launois, which was a very brave move to kind of throw those out into the market all at the same time. But like the Launois didn't even get on the shelf. It just straight out.
And important to say, UK exclusive as well. I don't know.
Oh, of course, yes.
Will there be anyone tuning in who doesn't live on
there could well be people tuning in from overseas, but unfortunately they won't have a sample pack because shipping outside of the UK is an absolute nightmare at the moment. Indeed. So I've got I do have people from overseas in America and things like that, but unfortunately I can't send packs to them yet.
Yeah, fair enough.
But
well,
yeah, this was a UK exclusive. Yeah,
we can say to those people, well done for not living in the UK just now, anyway, because it's there's a lot going on here.
there is, but I'm not sure living in America is that much of any better. So who knows?
Yeah, I did watch a little bit of a primary debate last night. So anyway,
good. Let's not get. Yeah, I'll cut that bit out. Jesus Christ.
the less said, the better, eh?
Yeah.
So yeah, this one. So Cask 529 was a single cask, is a single cask, and really, there's nothing in the whiskey world that exists like a single cask whiskey. You know, it's the closest you can get to being in the tonnage warehouse with me at Ardnamurchan and sampling straight from the cask. You know, really, it's cask strength. There's no coloring, there's no filtering. It's as close as you can get to just emptying the cask and putting it in your glass, you know?
Yeah.
Bit of filtering, of getting rid of all the sediment, of course. But there is something beautiful. If you really, really love it, there's something tragic about it too, because it will never be the same again. You will never get this draft again in your life. Yeah. Even if we release Cask 528 in the future, you can be guaranteed it will taste different, right? They go different journeys, even if they're stored side by side. So yeah, single casks is I guess it's interesting to talk about the aim of a single cask versus a batch product, actually, because when you're doing a batch, even the ones like the Paul Launois, where I was saying you're happy if people don't all like it.
Yeah.
You're aiming for a certain level of appeal with a batch product. With a single cask, you're just looking for something interesting, something that stands out, something memorable. We've taken that to the absolute extreme in the past with the now famous Ardnamurchan, if you remember seeing that.
Oh, God, yeah.
Did you ever actually manage to have a taste?
Yes, I actually got sent a sample from one of my regular customers, and I think I was a little disappointed by it, but only because I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah,
I think I'd read too much about it. Have you heard about the infamous fish ski?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, that was
those realms of offensiveness.
No. But it was one of those where it wasn't as extreme as I thought it was going to be.
Fair enough.
It was kind of like I tried it and went, oh, actually, no, that's not that bad, and then had to kind of reapproach it again. Yeah.
I think in the end, it was actually just quite a palatable dram. If you,
absolutely,
It had a very unusual nose, and it's great when we've wheeled that one out. But any single cask is to kind of say, look, these can be outliers. They're not always safe.
Yeah,
this one in particular, I think, is quite ashy. It's quite it's quite dark in flavor in terms of the smoke is a little bit more heavy in that regard.
Yep.
It leans more towards Islay than the previous ones we've tried tonight. Without being medicinal, it's got that more heft on the peat, maybe. The American oak is interesting, and that's why we mentioned it on the label too, where that will lend a different flavor to kind of typically the Spanish oak sherries that you would see out there. And yeah, to be honest, this will have been one that we found in a previous blending session. As I said, we're trying to use our time wisely. When we come to do a new single cask, we're not just going blindly into the warehouse and trawling around until we find something. If we find something at the blending session that seems remarkably good, we'll put a star against it and put it to the side.
Yeah.
When it comes to doing a single cask, we maybe got 5 or 10 candidates already. So it's important for us to do single casks. That's the Adelphi way. That's the philosophy of the company. It was kind of founded on single cask and cask strength. But as we've touched upon at the start, the reality is that the limited nature is difficult. So we don't often nowadays do a worldwide single cask of Ardnamurchan. We usually do one for a single country, or dare I say, sometimes even a single shop. So occasionally we'll decide we're doing one. And to be honest, we just thought, time to show the UK some love. Paul Launois is going to be gone. The sherry is going to be, we think, popular. Let's just do a trio at the same time and just going a bit. So yeah, there's not too much else to say about it. I mean, how are you finding it? I don't know if you've actually tried it before tonight.
I think it's absolutely fascinating. It's I totally get what you mean by that kind of darker smoke. It's got, every time I nose it, and this is one of the things I love particularly about whiskey. I don't tend to get it with many other spirits. The occasional rum is sometimes I can spend half an hour just nosing it, and I can go back to it and get something different every time. And every time I come back to this, there's something new, there's something different. There's that 95% cocoa dark chocolate in there. There's embers of logs that have been set on fire, not necessarily a barbecue, but like a bonfire. And it's that kind of dying embers of a really thick log that feels really dark.
Yeah.
There's elements
about things like kind of like hickory smoke, you know.
Yeah. It's like slightly sweet. It reminds me a little bit of I don't know if you've had any of the White Peak Wireworks, but their whiskies, the best way I can describe the smokiness that's inherent with their whiskies is a very dark smoke that's low to the floor for some reason. It kind of rolls along the floor, and it's got elements of that in there as well. It's just one that keeps changing, and I don't even need to drink it, and I'm still having an absolute whale of a time with it.
I like that. You know, that's I can't remember what dram I used to. There was an old refill bourbon dram, a 30-year-old tropical delight that we had for a while. And I remember describing it one night as whiskey for people without a mouth, you know, and it was
that's brilliant.
It was that where you could absolutely just nose it and be satisfied without even tasting it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, I think this is with anything we've released in batches, there should be a balance. But with a single cask, certainly one that's a little bit more full on. It's peated, it's sherried, it's cask strength, it's first fill sherry. This is not, we're not trying to achieve balance here. We're just showing you a glimpse into the warehouse and some directions that that are at the more extreme end, the Ardnamurchan flavor. So yeah, it's a fun one to do. As I know, it's not really lasted that long, but to be honest, that's why it's really cool that you've put the little tasting packs together as well, Ben. I think it's again, like I said at the start, we try to make sure that we support retailers that are doing things like this, you know. And it's if 30 people or so are getting to try these drams that otherwise one person might have bought the bottle and in the worst case scenario may have never opened it, then
exactly.
We've all lost out there, you know.
Yeah. And I'm finding I'm doing that more and more now, because there's people that you know they just disappear into the ether and they're never seen again. And there's a lot of people that they'll literally turn around and go, I just want to try it.
Yeah,
that's all. You know, I'll if I need to buy the bottle, I'll buy the bottle. But you know, there's other people that will, if they get their hands on a bottle, they end up sharing it anyway. So it's sort of one of those things of I'd much rather give people the opportunity to try it, and if the likes of yourself can then join me on a call and supposedly spend an hour, but it's been quite a lot longer than that, kind of just to give some kind of background information about it and kind of put everything into context. And so that when you're drinking it, you've got just that kind of awareness of the work and the thought that's gone behind it. I think just, you know, it adds the extra dimension of not only is it great liquid, but also you can then appreciate the work that's been put into getting it to that particular point.
No, it's great to be, you know, I love being able to, well, it's quite obvious, I like being able to talk about it because I have done several hours. I've been pretty sure I've heard the Oscar music a few times, actually shooing me off.
No, it's fine. Yeah, no.
But
normally it's me. To be honest, normally it's me. So it's really nice that somebody else is kind of waffling on.
Like, it's that thing where there's a lot to actually cover in this distillery. We've got a lot going on, and there's plenty that we've not even touched upon tonight. But I think, really, honestly, just to say that I appreciate you putting the tasting pack together. It looks amazing as well, and it's a cool one. Here we've got drams that are recently released. We've got drams from the past.
Mhm.
We've got drams that are easy to buy, drams that some people may have wanted to buy and haven't been able to find. So
Yeah.
it's a cool, in 3 years, we've only been releasing whiskey for 3 years. It's nice to actually be able to do a full lineup that isn't cask samples, and these are things we've actually released, and they are all very different. And with the exception of the blend, but even the blend, they are all from the same distillery, at least in part. So, yeah, it'll be interesting, as you touched upon earlier, to see what's in the future. Is the optimum time coming, and how do we manage the future and things? But we're 10-year-old next year. We'll have some fun things for that, I can assure you. And hopefully we'll continue to do what we've been doing, and those who are enjoying it seem to be enjoying it quite a lot. So we'll try and keep
Definitely.
that.
No, it has to be said, the continual sort of comments and the reputation of Ardnamurchan. Like I say, there's a number of new distilleries recently. So, there's yourself, there's Rasay, there's White Peak, there's Filey Bay, of the new distilleries that really seem to be consistently, people are going, oh, it's really good all the way through, everything that's going through. So,
it's great. It's great you mentioned Filey Bay and Wireworks too, because I actually went to Filey Bay 2 months ago, 3 months ago, and Joe and Amy showed me around, and got a lot of time for those guys, and their managing director David came up and visited Antonia at the distillery, and we're all very aware that there's lots of us out there at the moment, but I think there's room for a lot of us, and we're mostly we're just pals, right? We all work behind the scenes. We're all just hanging out and having pints and drams together, and it's nice to see people forging their own way. But certainly English, Irish, Welsh whiskey is really making the Scotch whiskey guys, up their game too.
Absolutely, very much so.
There's lots of fun things going on. So it's been great to chat, Ben, and we'll see once you edit it. We'll see if we make it beyond under an hour.
No, absolutely no chance, mate.
we need to say well done to anyone who's made it to
I was going to say
bitter end.
This is where we put the little secret code word at the end or something like that, where it's like, right, if you've lasted this long, use the code word this and you'll get this for free or something like that. I've actually got like 48 bottles of Paul Launois and I'm going to give them away for free or something like that. That's great.
We need to do a Marvel post credit scene or something like that.
Oh, you want me to put credits on this as well? Jesus.
Well, you're quite a wizard with some of that media. But no, honestly, and please include it in the video.
Yeah.
Ben, I really do appreciate it. And
absolutely,
honestly,
mate.